Hello and welcome to episode number 4 of the Expert Table Tennis Podcast. My name is Ben Larcombe, and in today's show I'm joined by a good friend of mine called Mark Simpson, who is a semi-professional table tennis player over in Germany and also has a master's degree in sports psychology and works kind of going around delivering seminars to clubs and teams and individuals all about how they can maximize their performance and get the most out of the mental side of the game. So I thought it'd be a great idea to get him on the show, pick his brain about some of those topics, find out what he does, what he teaches, and hopefully you'll be able to get some really good insight from that. So let's get straight into the interview with Mark Simpson. So I'm joined today by Mark Simpson. Mark, hello.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I've got a little bit of a cold, so this could be interesting, but it should be fine.
Now, a lot of people probably know you already because you've been involved with posts on my blog and you had quite a big input in the Expert in the Year Challenge. But what people probably don't know is how you got to where you are now. So you're currently living in Germany and playing semi-professional table tennis. But how did you go from being a complete beginner to getting up to that level?
Okay, so I kind of started the way that a lot of people might. I'm from England, so I went on holiday in the summer. It was obviously raining, so we got stuck inside the hotel, and there was a table tennis table there. So my mum showed me how to hold a bat, how to kind of just about hit the ball, and I started playing all that holiday. We got back, and there was a club in my local town actually advertising in the paper, so it was really kind of perfect timing. So I went along. I was 7 at the time, so I was really small. I was actually that small that my mum was scared that I would hit my head on the net post as I walked around the table. So that's how small I was. But yeah, I started off once a week. It slowly built up. I started playing competitions at about 9 or 10, and then just continued going like that at Darlington Table Tennis Club until I was 16. And then when I was 16, I moved to Grantham, to the Table Tennis Academy that Dan talked about last week. So I was there for 2 years, really putting some more effort into my training. Went to university after that, started playing a bit in France, and then during university spent a year abroad in Sweden, where I played in a league over there and in Denmark. And then when I finished my studies, I moved back to Sweden, played over there, and now I'm in Germany playing for a team in Germany.
So, and you're 25 years old now, is that right?
I'm 25.
So 18 years of table tennis.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Cool. And then you spoke about studying at university. So you went to Nottingham and you studied psychology. How did you pick that course?
Yeah, so I've always had it kind of in my mind. I don't know how it came in, but when I was a little kid, when everybody thought of what they wanted to be when they were older, I somehow decided I wanted to be a sports psychologist. So it was natural. When I went to uni, I did psychology undergraduate at Nottingham. And that was kind of just the stepping stone that I felt I needed to do to get into the sports psychology side. And then when I finished in Nottingham, I'd already spent a year abroad in Sweden, and there was a perfect course for me going back over there to do a master's in sports psychology back in Sweden at the university I was at, and then spending some time in Germany as well. So it was kind of a joint master's between a university in Sweden called Lund and a university in Germany called Leipzig.
And currently you're back from Germany, so you're in the UK for a few weeks. Why is it that you're back, and what have you been doing?
Yeah, so I'm back doing a few kind of workshops and seminars. So part of what I do as a job is to deliver different seminars and workshops on how people can improve their performance. So I've been giving a series of seminars in different places, just teaching people these different techniques and helping them to develop them by themselves and hopefully go on to improve their performance.
And you did one this week, is that right?
Yeah, so I was at Bishop Auckland Table Tennis Club. One of my friends there, Matt Porter, is the head coach. So we organised doing one. I was there for a training camp as well. So I did one seminar on the night before, talking about how to set routines and how to really make the most out of your training, how to optimize the time that you have when you're training.
Cool. And like the name of these seminars and workshops that you're delivering is Train Smart, Play Smart, which is kind of something that you've come up with as a package to deliver to different sports people and in particular table tennis players. How did you come up with that Train Smart, Play Smart idea, and what's kind of the thinking behind it?
Yeah, so there's only a certain amount of real hard techniques and tools that you can use through psychology that can be kind of altered and changed in different ways to suit almost any situation. And one of them is goal setting. So how effectively you can plan for the future, how you can evaluate how quickly you're performing, and how to do that more effectively. And one of the techniques in goal setting is called SMART technique. So it's an acronym to make your goals more specific, more measurable, more agreed, more realistic, and more time constrained. So it's kind of a routine you can follow through when you're setting your goals. So this idea of doing things in a smart way really just linked in. So the people can only really practice a certain amount of time. Even professionals, their bodies can only take so many hours of practice. So you really have to do not more quantity, but instead more quality. So you really have to practice in a smart way. So I got this idea of training smart. And then also when you get into a match, you need to be really smart and tactically aware. And the people who play that little bit smarter than others will tend to have a lot better results.
Sure. So you're saying that it's not just about trying to do as much table tennis or as much training as possible, but it's about trying to get the most out of the time that you've got available.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people aren't in the position where they're playing professionally. A lot of people have to go to school or work or whatever, so they have to try and fit their table tennis in around it. If you only have this amount of practice, you really need to make it as effective as it can possibly be. And you're not going to do that by working harder because you can't work harder. So you have to work smarter and really change and make it the most effective it can possibly be for all the effort you put in.
Okay, that sounds really useful, especially for I know a lot of my audience kind of wish that they were in a situation where they could play more, but that's just not really possible. So if they are looking to improve at a faster rate, then I guess it really does come down to are they able to use their time more effectively to train smarter instead of training more. What are the kind of components of this train smart, play smart thing that you're promoting? So what are kind of like the key parts of it?
Yeah, so the Train Smart, Play Smart workshops are currently a set of three, and it starts off with the kind of Train Smart idea. So you have smart goal setting. So I'll go through how to set effective goals, different techniques in which you can use these goals, and how you can really set them out so that you can stay motivated and really work on the things you need to work on when you're in training. Then also there's imagery or visualization. So this is a different way in which you can practice. If you're not on the table, if you're not able to get on the table, then you need to still be able to. You can still practice away from that, and by using imagery of imagining yourself playing in an efficient and structured way, then you can actually continue improving even though you're not actually getting onto the table. So they're kind of the train smart. And then the play smart is more how do you control your emotions during matches to make sure that you're at the optimal level when you're playing. How do you talk to yourself? A lot of people will get down on themselves, will interpret the way they're playing in a different way, and speak to themselves in a negative way that will have a negative effect. So it's how do you kind of talk to yourself? How do you see and interpret the points in a way that will be more effective for your confidence and for your performance? And then the last one that I've just done, we look at routine setting. So this affects both. How can you prepare yourself more effectively for the matches? So before you go into a match, you want to be at the same level of energy levels, of game mode or whatever. So how do you set yourself getting into that consistently? And finally, just the training optimization. So how do you make the most out of each training session? Just little tips and techniques that you can use to make sure you make the most out of every minute, whether you're playing against better, worse players, or whatever you're coming up against.
Okay, so you've got kind of six individual components there.
Yeah.
The second one, which is kind of, you spoke about imagery, visualization, things that you can do when you're not on the table. I'd like to maybe dig into that a bit more because that's something that I think a lot of people don't really understand. But I often get people asking kind of what can they be doing if they don't have anyone to practice with, or they're, don't have access to a club kind of whenever they want to. Is imagery and visualization something that you think would be helpful to all players, or is it mainly just for elite players?
No, it's imagery is a really good tool. It can be used in a lot of different ways. Um, from actually learning skills. So what happens when you learn a skill is that your muscles have a little bit of memory. So when you repeat this when you repeat this shot over and over again in exactly the same way, your muscles and your arm will learn to play that shot in exactly that way. And that kind of links into the brain in a way it makes that association. And what you can do by practicing is to just strengthen that association so that that move becomes completely natural and the one that you will do by just when you're trying to do it, rather than it being completely all over the place. So it's all about strengthening this association, and imagining yourself doing it can also strengthen this association. So you can continue to learn the skill even if you're not actually physically doing it.
So you're saying you can kind of practice table tennis in your mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so you kind of try and make it more structured. So you work on it to make sure that it's as clear and focused as it can be when you're practicing it, just like you're practicing in real life. But you're practicing it in your mind, not actually making any movements, and you're still strengthening this association. You're still improving your natural ability to play just through imagining it rather than playing it. So if you can't get onto the table, then there's still something you can do to improve your performance.
And that works, is it? Are there kind of like studies that prove that? Because it sounds a bit nuts that, if I'm trying to learn a particular serve and I do half an hour's practice and then I have to go home, I can somehow continue practicing it just by thinking about it. But I mean, does that really work in reality?
Yeah, there's loads of studies that actually show that this is really, really effective as a tool. One of the more crazy ones, I can't remember the exact details, but there was a group of weightlifters, and the experiment was that for one set of weightlifters would go and actually lift weights every day. They would do their normal training. The others wouldn't do that, but would take the same amount of time and do exactly the same training session, just not actually lifting the weights. So while one was there lifting, sweating, doing all of their work, the others were sat there for the same amount of time, just imagining doing the same thing. And what they actually found was that those who just sat there and imagined doing it still improved about 60%, I think it was, about 60% of what the others had improved at in the same time. So that was just because those links in the brain were becoming more and more strengthened, so they were becoming more efficient, and it was still improving their weightlifting, which is something that you could only ever imagine would be built up by hard work, which is really, really surprising.
So, I mean, how does that work? Are they getting stronger, or is it just something, I don't know, mental or neurological?
Yeah, so it's more neurological. So these associations, if you tell your muscles, if your brain's telling your muscles to lift this weight, lifting this weight over and over again makes that movement more efficient, makes those links between the brain and the muscles more clear. So it's more efficiently telling every little part of your muscle to lift, rather than it not really knowing what to do and only telling part of it at one time. So if you can build up these links, you can build up these links just by imagining it as well. So it just makes that movement exactly the same. You imagine doing that move, and in your mind, as far as your brain is concerned, you're doing the same thing as actually doing that move.
Is there any research looking at this kind of thing in table tennis where they get people to one group do a load of training and the other group just kind of imagine they're doing training, or is it not got that far yet?
There's not particularly much money in table tennis research at the moment, which is a sad situation, but that's the case. So there are very little studies into table tennis in any way, but there are links into tennis and other things like that, which have shown this is really effective in different situations. And one of the more noticeable things is that if you want to practice your serve, your serve is something that's really clear and just down to you, so you can control everything. So you can really focus this imagery on your serve to the point where the top players will be able to do exactly the same serve with their eyes closed because their arms will move in exactly the same way. They know exactly how long the ball will take to go up and down and exactly what time they need to hit their arm. And that will be natural. And if you practice your imagery on this, you can build that up so that you can do that more effectively every time. So that's one kind of short tip as to how that could really improve it.
Okay, so service practice is suited to this quite a lot, is it?
Yeah.
Should people listening to this start practicing their serves in their head?
Yeah, but there's definitely a way in which you need to do this to make it more effective.
Sure. So how would you do that in kind of like real terms? What's the best way to go about doing this?
So there's certain things that you need to think about and work on when you're doing imagery, and one of the key ones is controllability. So if you're imagining something, and this is something that you'll find is difficult to do. If you're imagining doing something, you need to be able to keep it controlled so that it happens exactly as you want to do it. So a lot of people, if they're imagining just playing a random point, if you tell them to do that, it's very difficult for them to actually imagine what they want to be working on and make it that structured training the same way as you would if you were actually training. They'll just imagine this big wild point where somebody's playing shots from behind their back, diving and playing a big random forehand that you dive and crazily get back. They're not going to be just practicing in their mind. They're not going to want to sit there and just do, okay, short serve that pops up a little bit, you topspin, and just go on like a normal rally.
Okay, you mean the mind kind of just wanders off into thinking about other stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it, because this training is not the most exciting because you're working on these simple things. It's very difficult to actually keep it controlled and keep focused on what you want to be working on.
Okay. Well, maybe in the future we can do something going into more detail about kind of imagery and service practice and do some kind of video or blog post on that, because I think that would be quite useful.
Yeah.
Now, this week, a couple of days ago, you were delivering kind of the third part of your Train Smart, Play Smart series, which is on routine setting and training optimization. I was wondering if anything in particular came out of that session that you think would be really useful, or if there was just any kind of key point that you were teaching that you think people should know.
Yeah. So the big thing about the routines, and there's different places in which you can do these routines. I've talked about it a bit on some of these videos that will be going out in the next few weeks. But what kind of is overlooked a lot in table tennis, and is really, really important, is what people do between points. So a lot of people have a habit between points that they will naturally do without having really thought about it. It's just something that they've picked up. But what you want to be trying to do is to make this transition between points more effective and really make the most of this time that you have, because you don't really have much time. So you need to make the most of it. And one technique, one kind of tip that I taught on Tuesday was to think of the before, the now, and the next. So you need to take time after a point to think about what happened in that point. You have some emotions that are running through your mind. You have the actual outcome of the point going through your mind. You shouldn't just push that away, because that will just build up and build up, especially if you lose points. That anger, that frustration is going to build and build if you don't deal with it. So you need to spend some time actually dealing with that, focusing on, okay, that point happened that way. Firstly, tactically, why did I lose that point? Secondly, it's okay that I lost that point. There's nothing I can do about it now. Starting to look more to the future, what will I do instead? So that's the before. Then you have the now. So what am I like now? Is my mind in the correct frame of mind to perform at my best in the next point? Is my body in the right situation? Is there enough energy? Is there enough adrenaline? Or is there too much? And if either of those are the case, you need to do something to get back down to that level where you need to be for the next point. And then finally, fun next. So it's okay doing all of these things and getting down and serving. But if you go into any point without having an idea of what you want to do in the point, you're just giving the whole tactical things away. The other person then has the whole choice of what he wants to do, and you're just reacting. So if you go into a point without knowing what you want to do, then you're giving away a lot more points. So the before, dealing with the point before, dealing with the emotions that came up. The now, am I in the right situation mentally and physically to play the point at my best? And then the next, how am I going to win this point tactically? And if you can make that the last thought before you go into the next point, then you're more likely to be able to keep that mental tactical thinking into the next point.
Sure. No, I think that's really, really useful, and I'm definitely going to try and use that kind of when I go back into games, trying to think that the second that point is over, quickly analyze what happened, then try and get myself in a good kind of like emotional state in the now part, and then just be thinking, right, what can I do for this next point? How am I going to play this better? And I think if everyone can kind of remember those 3 steps in between the point, even if you've only got 5 seconds or 10 seconds, then that should help them to play a lot better. I think that's really useful. One thing that I ask a lot of people that come on the podcast is, do they have kind of one big tip, something that they really believe is important, that kind of the listeners can go away and kind of apply to their game now straight away, that should have some kind of impact on them? Have you got one of those?
Yeah. So what was kind of the key outcome of the training and optimization part of the seminar I gave was, there's always something you can gain from every situation. So whether you're playing against a stronger player and somebody who can keep the ball in the correct situation, then that's great and you can make the most of it. If you're playing against a weaker player and they can't keep the ball in the right place, they can't keep enough balls on, there's still a way in which you can really make the most out of it. So a quick example is, if they can't block into the correct places, then that's not an excuse to get frustrated and annoyed because they're terrible. How can I practice? How can I improve with this? That is, you can then use that as an example and an excuse to then really work on your improving under irregular play. If you don't know if they're going to play it to the correct place or not, you have to be ready for both of those positions that it could possibly come to. So you can improve your reactions, you can improve that sort of situation and work in that and really make the most of every situation. Even if if at first glance it looks like it's a bad thing for you, you can still get something out of it.
Okay, so you're just saying to make sure that you go into every situation with that kind of mindset of, what can I get out of this? How can I use this to kind of best serve me, instead of just thinking, oh, this person's rubbish and this is just going to be a waste of 5 minutes until I can get on with someone better.
Yeah, exactly. There's no situation that you can't get anything out of.
So it's been really great talking to you, Mark. We've had to whiz through a lot of stuff there, so I'm sure we'll do other stuff in the future. You've got a website. What's the address for that?
It is brainspec.blogspot.co.uk. If you go on the videos the Ask Mark videos on the website, you can find it on there quite easily.
Yeah, and I'll put the links underneath this in the blog post as well. Finally, what kind of things do you offer? So I know that you do these workshops. If people want a workshop, how can they go about getting that? And kind of what other services are you offering to table tennis players?
So I do these seminars. Any club can have these. Obviously, I don't go back to England particularly often. So if you're in England listening to it, then get in touch still. I would love to work with you, and we try and fit it in with either when I'm next back or with another couple of seminars around different places. Otherwise, I can work on Skype as well.
So let's say I'm a player who's trying to get better, and I feel like I've got loads of issues in this area that you better help me with, and I wanted to do something over Skype. How would that work, and how much would it cost roughly?
So what would happen is that I would give a free first meeting. So we would have a conversation for about an hour or so, and then we would talk about how we could possibly work together. It works out about £40 an hour. Each major session would be about 2 hours where I teach these skills, and then we would have a follow-up hour the next week where we evaluate how you're putting these into practice and how we can do it. So that's about 3 hours per session. So it would be 4 or 5 big sessions and then 4 or 5 small sessions. And a typical series would last about 15 hours in total.
Okay. And your whole philosophy is all about giving people the skills so that they can kind of self-diagnose and they have the ability to deal with future problems instead of just solving problems as they pop up.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of me equipping them. So I'm not the expert in their lives. They know exactly what's going on with them. So I'm just giving them these tools that they can then use in the situations that they need to use them. I'm not telling them you have to do this at this point and this is how it will fix this problem, or you're rubbish at this. This is what you need to work on. I will just help them, give them these tools that they can then more effectively work for themselves. And it's worth pointing out that this is that this works for any level of player. If you're serious about wanting to improve, it doesn't matter whether you're just a beginner or whether you're at the top. This can really improve anybody, and especially the earlier that you can get these, the more efficiently you can train. So when I first started learning these techniques, I was already 12, 14 years down my training level, and I look back and think just how much more effectively I could have used those 14 years of training, and just how much better I could be. So if you can get these early, then you can make the most of every session afterwards.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Mark. It's been great talking to you.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of your time in the UK, and I'll be in touch, and I'm sure we'll do loads of other stuff together in the future. So thanks for being on the show, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah. See you.
See you later, Mark. So I found that chat really interesting, in particular all the stuff Mark was saying about imagery and visualization and how we can almost fool our bodies into believing that we've done all this practice just by thinking about it in our minds. So that's something that I'm definitely going to be looking into more in the future and talking to Mark about more to see how we can incorporate that into the kind of training routine that we're doing. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Joss Kelly and Doc172271, who are a couple of iTunes listeners who were kind enough to leave us a 5-star review. If you are listening on iTunes, I'd really appreciate if you could go and leave us a review on there. And of course, subscribe to the show so that you get updates when new episodes are released. The next episode will be out in a week or two's time, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for listening, and head over to experttabletennis.com to see everything else that I'm getting up to with table tennis and coaching. Thank you very much. I'll see you on the next show.